This is the Wizmax Artrian PC case, and you might even remember the design, but not from the build we did like a month ago, but from the Wizmax ML420BTF, which has like a very cryptic product name in comparison. And if we look at the front panel, both PC cases seem to come with the same idea of having a bunch of blocks in the front making up or something called a Mondrian mesh style, or in the case of the Artrian, just mesh square, which sounds like it's the budget version of Mondrian, and that's also precisely how I would describe this case. To me, the Wizmax Artrian is essentially the spec-down budget version of the ML420, but let's start at the beginning. This is a quite small mid-tower hovering at 1.6 centimeters off the ground, which is like minimally too little. Like 2 centimeters is usually what I like for my PSUs not to be choked around too much. And in terms of overall dimensions, as I said, it's a small mid-tower, 456 millimeters long, 211 millimeters wide, and 487 millimeters high. So it's just marginally higher than it is deeper. And it is standing on 4 quite small feet, but they've got some nice feeling rubber underneath. And once the case is filled, the wobbly feeling essentially disappears and it stands, I would even say, slightly stronger. Yeah, everything is falling except for the case. The only part which I wouldn't describe as too budgety feeling is the tempered glass side panel. It may be just 2.8 millimeters thick, which is like the bottom of the barrel when it comes to glass panels, but it's sitting on hinges, making it swivelable, which is really cool, and then there are magnets to fix it to the case. And you've got a little strap that you can pull on, preventing unnecessary glass cleaning. And you can hide it, which I won't do because it's incredibly hard to get it out afterwards, but you can hide it. And of course, it's powered by design. Once that design-powered piece of glass is removed, we can get to the interior, which is just regular, plain old ATX compatibility. But from there, the base level compatibility is not that bad at all. GPUs can be up to 390mm long and up to 150mm deep, ignoring the PCIe slot, so it's even compatible with the NVIDIA Octopus. There are 11 fan spots within the case, one 120mm pre-filled with an ARGB fan in the back, 3 120s or 2 140s in the top, and another 3 120s non-ARGB black pre-filled in the front, which this time can even be replaced with 3 140s. And for a special kick, we got another 2 120s as side intake. Theoretically, we could install another 2 120s on top of the PSU shroud, but as you can already see, the potential airflow of that thing is quite limited by itself. Not to forget that the first one is blocked off by the PSU anyway, and the second one doesn't really have anything to breathe from, except from like whatever air is coming in from the most bottom front fan, which is not that much. So yeah, these are more like show fan spots than anything else. As for radiators, that's the part which did kind of impress me. The top obviously allows for 360s to be used, as we did for this build, but the surprising thing is the front, because it might be the tightest 420 fit I have ever seen, but it is a 420 fit. Unfortunately, there's also the part where the budget side of this case will kick in, because even if a 420 fits, you lose one of the top fan spots and you take away parts of the sidewise intake, which in turn means no fans, or at least no regular thickness fans there. And you are kind of left with a halfway see-through hole in like the front of the case, which just makes the whole build look like really dumb. You might now think that you can just exchange the two positions, so the radiator into the front panel and then move the fans back, but that doesn't work. Where the fans mount would create exactly the same issue. You maybe could pull it off of a 360, but then also why not just mount the radiator inside? So yeah, no. Once the 420 is in there in the front, everything else is lost. And as we are on the budget side of this thing, CPU air coolers are also quite limited at 170mm height, making this more of an AIO type of case, because 170 is like really low for a good build. And don't get me even started on cable management. But before that, the back panel and the removable middle section of the top panel for that matter, both are mounted using non-catching screws. Again, an instance of really budgety stuff, and the back panel is installed by hooking it in the front and then just squeezing it like back into place, which is not that fun once you come across these side-mounted fans. For some reason, Wizmax decided, in all of their wisdom, they decided to pre-cable manage the front fans, which in itself is a great idea, and I would be thankful for it. However, the, let's say, position of the PWM plug coming out of whatever they've created there is very far away from any motherboard plug. And even if you somehow manage to get it into the port, the cable would just be dangling in front of the sidewise fans, constantly being pulled in, and I know what I'm talking about. It will be pulled in. So everything needs to be untangled and then retangled again to somehow make the complete turn around these fans here, and basically to not get in between them, the magnetic dust filter, and the back panel. And you will probably need an extension for that. And it doesn't really end here, because even if technically there are 2 centimeters worth of cable stuffing area behind the main plate, it's just not everywhere. Except for a few zip tie slots, cable management in here just isn't really thought through, or there isn't any like clear marked route which would help you in any way to make your life easier. So no, cable management is not fun in here. It's just stuffing and then somehow zip tying it so close to the back or to the motherboard plate so that you somehow manage to squeeze that back panel back on there. The PSU on the other hand is fine. By default you got about 260mm total length including the cable. So even with like a 180-200mm long PSU you're gonna be fine. And if you want to use the total case length for your stuffing needs, you can also remove the hard drive cage in front of it, which by the way supports either 2 3.5 or 2 2.5 inch drives, not to forget the other 2 2.5 inch drive mounts right above the PSU. And to finish all of these specs, the I/O is sitting in the top of the case and features a USB 3.2 Gen 2x2 USB-C, which is quite impressive for considering this is like a budget case and considering all the other aspects of this case. But then we also got a USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A 2.0 Type A 3.5mm jack, and a power and reset button, as well as this LED button which does literally nothing. Or at least nothing by default, because there is nothing like a controller or any RGB controlling device included with the case. So either you bring your own controller which has the 2-pin plug to control it like physically, which is then cool, and if not, then you are left with like a useless cable and a useless button that doesn't do anything. And with the entire case presented, let's talk about the build we did in here. This is a slightly old schoolish build. We've got a 14700K pad with a slightly older RTX 3080 Ti from Zotac and cooled down by this 360mm Montec Hyperflow Silent sitting in the top and 2 of these Cougar fans on the side. And I gotta say the build is running. It is running, but just not that fine. Pushed to the max using CPU burner from Firmac and Firmac itself. We got 92C on the CPU and 72C on the GPU, which is not, these are not that great numbers. And it's not thermal throttling, but it just ain't that great. Now most of this does come from the AIO. I just don't believe that it is particularly good, and I haven't checked it out yet individually, but I have a bad feeling about it. However, some of it also is coming from the case, because as of removing all of the panels, the temperature of both CPU and GPU just dropped by a degree C. Now the front panel does seem fine to me, or at least it doesn't seem to be restrictive to a degree where I find it to be troubling, but the top, however, that's another story. Already a paper test shows how much restriction is actually created by that mesh, and to put it frankly, as far as top mesh goes, this is like one of the worst instances I have seen. Like, that's a lot of potential cooling being lost right there. Like, that's restrictive. And I mean, this doesn't come from nothing. When you put the top panel next to the front panel, you can see that the hole sizing, the mesh hole sizing is very, very different. And are there like measuring devices for that? Because I would love to have like something where I can measure how big or small are the mesh holes. That would be like a very cool thing to measure for reviews. But yeah, very clearly the front panel has bigger holes, thus less airflow restriction, thus, yeah, there we are. The top is restrictive as Now, this doesn't mean that the case can't perform. It will still do whatever it is supposed to do. Just know that there is potential, or there is something left on the table. On the fans, I gotta say that I am positively surprised by them. Sure, they are budget as hell, and that back fan just looks like a 20-cent replica of a Lee & Lee fan, and which is funny, like when it spins up the first time, it does like a weird noise. No clue why it does that, and it stops 20 seconds in, like once it's ramped up, but it does a weird noise. But all of them are 4-pin PWM controls, which is like never the case for like sub €100 cases, and they aren't obnoxiously loud. Like below 40%, I think they are quiet enough to just keep spinning all day long and not annoy the hell out of me. So, budget or not, 3 intake fans, 1 exhaust fan, and combine that with whatever rightfully sized or slightly oversized, I would even say air cooler or AIO. AIO probably considering the 170mm air cooler limitation, but you got yourself essentially a ready-to-go case with no additional fans needed. But I would still get at least two, because by default, these two sidewise spots are empty, and not having anything in there might not be like a breaking point for performance of the case or like of your overall build, but it will certainly look very, very stupid. So maybe get the two fans. On another note, I think it's unfortunate that they didn't include some sort of cover for these two sidewise spots, just so people have the option to not use them. And I've seen that on budget cases, it exists. Covers do exist, but they just didn't care enough to do this, which is again another point in the budget camp. And there are a few more of these, like the non-catching screws I already mentioned. The front panel is mounted using my favorite way, excruciating pain. The mesh on the top is kind of just hard to get in and out, and this edge here, being the only part where I can apply some force to push it in, just unlocked a new personal fear. Like, it hurts. This edge here hurt. The PCIe brackets are breakout. Thankfully, they do include a replacement. I just don't get why they didn't include 7 of them. The metal work isn't particularly impressive. Everything does have a slight wiggle if you push hard enough. And just overall, the case has an immense budget feeling going on, which in itself is okay. Budget cases do exist for a reason, and as long as the price is low enough to offset the budgetiness of this case, I mean, I'm fine with that. You know, there are no bad products, just bad prices. And this time, I gotta admit, the price is right. For my European folks, we are completely left out, or at least I was not capable of finding any listing whatsoever on any platform for this case. For the other side of the globe, however, over on the US version of AliExpress, and yes, I needed to set the delivery address to an American one, I did find it for $47.50 US, which I believe is an excellent price point. Considering this is a ready-to-go case with somewhat decent GPU and AIO support combined with potential sidewise intake and somewhat decent fans, $47 is alright, I think. That's a fair price tag, I would say. Or in other words, I have seen much pricier cases which are basically a carbon copy of this. And as long as you like the design, I mean, the front already having the white, gray and black elements does create a certain aesthetic which you like or you do not like. But as for me, as long as this thing stays like sub $50 or like sub 50 euros if it pops off, could you like stop? A second time for a single video. As long as it stays... did you hear the rattle? Maybe I can try. Wait. It's when the PC first like boots up. Now. That's exactly. And then it just stops and never comes back again. Anyway, as long as the price tag stays below 50, I think it's a good bang for the buck deal. Just oversize your cooler slightly because the top does take away some of that performance. But okay, this should be everything on this Wizmax Artrian, and at this point a huge thank you to Wizmax for sending one over. Oh, on a side note, we have a Discord server, so if you want to join, the link is down below. And we got channel membership, so if you are planning to sell your soul for an RG poop emoji, that's one way to go. But if not, I'm also releasing the content to all members 2 or 3 weeks in advance. Except for the NDA stuff, because, you know, I don't want to get sued. Additionally, you can rest assured that the income will not only keep the channel afloat, but will also serve to get new drills, because I broke all of mine trying to tune this case. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want to continue, have a look at our take on the LANcool 207 Digital. That might cost like twice as much, but it is also like twice the build quality. Hope to see you on the next one. Bye bye.